Podcast City Network.
What is up, beautiful people? Welcome to episode 170 of this here show called the Nest Podcast. I'm your boy, the People's Champ, Brandon Brewer. The Zach Bill is joining me. Zach, what's up tonight?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going. You know, we woke up this morning and we were talking about how we were living in a bizarre world because of everything that we saw from week 9 of the NFL schedule. You know, I really did feel like it was a Twilight Zone whenever I looked through the scores and I was like, really, that team beat that team? It was insane. But I know the city of St. Louis doesn't have a dog in the fight when it comes to the NFL anymore, but that city is certainly golden. Do you want to allude to what I'm talking about there, Zach?
Absolutely. Yes. 5 St. Louis Cardinals players got gold gloves this year, and that includes center field Harrison Bader, left field Tyler O'Neill, first base Paul Goldschmidt, second base Tommy Edman, third base Nolan Arenado. That's a record in MLB for number of gold gloves on one team for 1 year. That team can play some defense, that's for sure. And I'm glad that they were shown love. I was fearful that maybe 2 or 3 guys would get it, but 5 is awesome. Yeah, just a great day for those guys and for Cardinals fans. And I think that goes to show just how important defense and pitching is to this team. And whenever we didn't have our ace like Jack Flaherty and stuff like that, it really showed, because that's where we make our money. You know, they don't have the biggest bats in the league, but they're still, you know, at least in contention. They made a wild card appearance, lost obviously to the Dodgers, but they stay in games because they have defense behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I found out on Twitter, Mason Hall at the Loaded Bases Pod said, are the St. Louis Cardinals the new New York Yankees? They spend a lot of money for players, win individual awards like those 5 Golden Gloves, yet no recent World Series title, 10 plus years. And you kind of gave a nice little reply to that tweet saying that, you know, hey, they may have spent money on 2 guys, Goldschmidt and Arenado, but the rest of the guys are kind of like homegrown talents. And at least they're out there playing every day and they're not injured like Stanton and Judge. And I noticed that you also took a subtle jab at his cubbies as well, but that was all in good fun. So, yeah, so to the Loaded Bases Pod, you know, Zach had his little response, and I agree with it. I think that the Cardinals are not the new New York Yankees. The New York Yankees are just a bunch of clowns in pinstripes at this point, because they do go out and spend all that money and they have nothing to show for it. But they do have the injury woes. Going back to your Cardinals, though, I also saw that your favorite rookie from the squad is also one of the finalists for Rookie of the Year, Dylan Carlson, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I believe on our predictions show for the MLB, that's who you predicted would be the Rookie of the Year. So he's at least down to the top 3.
Yeah, definitely a good year for him. You know, it wasn't the greatest thing ever, and I don't think he'll end up winning Rookie of the Year. He had an offensive slump that was pretty significant and never really kind of broke out of it. He had some places where he shined. He is a switch hitter, and he is a solid defender in right field, so he has some upsides to him, obviously. And I think the sky's the limit for a guy this young, but I do think he'll be eclipsed by Jonathan India from the Reds.
Man, switch hitter though, that's something that you don't really see coming up too often anymore. And those guys are so versatile because you can't get a solid pitching matchup against them. Zach knows rookies too, because in the American League, his rookie of the year candidate is also there, and Randy Arozarena. So if you want to know about the rookies, just go ask Mr. Billings over there.
Yeah. I think, at least for me, Arozarena was kind of a given because he had such a big splash in the postseason last year. I kind of figured, why could that not continue this year? And for the most part, it did. He made a name for himself yet again in the postseason, eating popcorn in the dugout and just making plays and stuff. So that was fun to see. He's an electric guy. I really wish we wouldn't have let him go, but that happens. So I think he'll probably win that for himself. I don't know very many rookies other than him in the American League. So my money is on him to win that one.
Gotcha. Yeah. It very well could come down to him, and his teammate Wander Franco is also one of the finalists. So it's interesting. The American League Cy Young just got announced, the finalists for that. And we were talking about that before we came on, and how the American League is kind of a toss up.
Yeah.
The finalist for the American League Cy Young, Garrett Cole from the Yankees, White Sox pitcher Lance Lynn, and Blue Jays pitcher Rob. And over in the National League, it was Max Scherzer. Who else was it? Do you remember off the top of your head?
Geez.
I'll look it up while we're talking.
No, I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm terrible at remembering.
I can't imagine that anyone would beat Scherzer for that.
I think he's pretty much got it locked, but it's also Corbin Burns from the Brewers and Zach Wheeler from the Phillies.
Yeah, Corbin Burns did have a great year.
Yeah, and a reliever coming out there and possibly winning the Cy Young is a huge deal. That's almost in a line with the bizarro world that we saw from week 9 of the NFL season. And this was a day when the underdogs had their day, because up and down the scorecard, you see teams that weren't supposed to win that went out there and won the game. Let's kick it off with the Jacksonville Jaguars absolutely shocking the Buffalo Bills. The final score isn't anything, too exciting. It was only 6-9, but that tells you that the Jags defense was ferocious, and they went out there and they were able to stifle one of the premier offenses in the NFL. Of course, everybody's been ranting and raving about how Josh Allen sacked, intercepted, and recovered a fumble from Josh Allen in this game, which was pretty remarkable. But the Jags defensive lineman Josh Allen definitely had his way in this game, in the battle of Josh Allen's.
It seems like just the Bills had a complete breakdown. I mean, if you thought that the Jets winning against the Bengals was a big upset, the Jags beating the Bills was possibly the biggest I've seen in several years. Absolutely wild. The score on that game was another wild thing. That's like a baseball score right there. And especially in today's football, you would think at least 20, 30 points would be put up by offenses. I didn't catch that game, so I don't know what the big issue was, but I have to think that something wasn't clicking, and the defense had Josh Allen's number. Crazy day, crazy for the Jags to win that. Yeah, that's just a huge shocker.
Yeah, Allen, he threw for 260 yards, 0 touchdowns, and he was picked twice. Not a good day for the Bills quarterback. Not a good day for Bills in fantasy football either.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely a shocker. And we got Freeberg coming on here. Jerome, how you doing tonight? But he's asking, how about them Cowboys? And Cowboys fans have been rather quiet on social media today and all day yesterday, because they were absolutely manhandled by the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, without Von Miller, with just a ragtag group of defense, went out there and at one point had the score at 27-0. The points that the Dallas Cowboys scored, they were pretty much all garbage time. The final was 30-16. So they scored their points late, but man, Dak did not look good in this one. He looked like a shell of the quarterback that we know him to be. But the defense went out there and they wanted it more.
Man, whenever you texted Adam and I about the score of that Cowboys game, I couldn't believe it. I was shocked, and I think a majority of NFL fans were as well. Dak Prescott had basically the worst game of his career, and my mind started kind of turning whenever we kind of figured that out. If you remember, he was kind of questionable to start the season with like a shoulder issue, and he's had a few little issues throughout the season. I wonder if he's battling an injury here, and it overcame him yesterday, and he just wasn't able to perform. I think he's one of those guys that's trying to fight through something, and maybe just he wasn't able to last week, or I mean yesterday, because that was just an uncharacteristic performance. That offense has been electric almost all season. Huge anomaly there from the Cowboys.
Yeah, it was a huge stinker. And, throughout the course of the season, every team is going to have this kind of a week where they just go out there and they just don't play. But you don't really expect that out of these teams, the Cowboys and the Bills, two teams that a lot of people have penciled in to be Super Bowl contenders.
Mm-hmm.
And they both end up putting up stinkers of a game in the same exact week. It's wild to see. Good for the Broncos. They're sitting at 5-4 now. That's a team that in the AFC West, that's playable. That's competitive because the Chargers are sitting at around the same record. The Chiefs are sitting at around the same record. So that is the going trend in the AFC West. So they could end up walking away as division champs, believe it or not.
Crazy. It's crazy to say that division is up for grabs. And there's,
Yeah,
like you said, there's about 4 teams that are all pretty even. And it's definitely not the Chiefs, division by a long shot this year. I mean, somebody that probably hasn't won that division in a while is going to win it, it seems like.
Yeah, because the Raiders, I mean, they're out there balling too right now. So it is an interesting division. Of course, they all will play each other at least one more time, but every team in that division is sitting at 5 wins.
Crazy.
Unbelievable. Another one of the blowout games that we saw where I would say an underdog came out there and won was the Browns absolutely destroying the Bengals in the battle for Ohio. Final score in that one was 41-16. Baker Mayfield looked good. He went out there and balled and was able to throw up a lot of points. Maybe not stat-wise, but he was able to get the ball moving and get everything going. And their boy Nick Chubb, he lit it up.
Mm-hmm.
He had several 2 touchdowns, I believe it was, and he had close to 200 yards rushing. Balling.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Their defense was able to hold down the Cincinnati Bengals, which was surprising. Both of those teams are sitting at 5-4 now. The AFC in general is kind of a crapshoot. There are a lot of good teams, and then, I'm not going to say a lot of good teams. A lot of teams that are just right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you've got the Ravens, who are, I think, at 6-2 now. They kind of are leading the pack. But as far as the AFC is concerned, it's a toss-up. There are a lot of teams that are in play for the playoffs.
Yep, 100%. It's a even keel conference, it seems like, and I think the Browns are on the up and up. It seems like I don't think very many people expected that performance. I kind of thought maybe they would win. I give them a bit of a nod there, but that was a big showing. And how crazy is it that you cut one of the better wide receivers and your team becomes better? I mean, that's something that not many people can really think about or understand, but it just seems like he wasn't jiving with that team.
Well, look at what happened last year, Zach. Odell Beckham Jr. tears his ACL. We think, the Browns season's pretty much done. What did they end up doing? Having a 10-win season and making the playoffs, and actually even winning their first playoff game since Abraham Lincoln was in office. They play better without Odell Beckham Jr. Yep. I know a lot of people are throwing around this weird stat where the 16 games that they've had with Odell, but a lot of that was before Stefanski came in. His offense, his mentality has completely changed the way that the Browns operate. I think this team, they thrive on being able to run the football. And when they have those weeks where they can go out there and run with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, it doesn't matter who your wide receivers are, because they're always going to be open if they have to. The defenses always have to pull up and respect that run. And that's how it was against the Bengals. And that's why they were able to move the ball at will. They were able to run the ball the Browns way.
Yep. I think you're 100% right. I think Stefanski's schemes work for this team. And I think the number one factor in that, like you said, is a good running back. And furthermore, they have 2 running backs that they can rely on. And that takes a lot of pressure off of Baker Mayfield. This team would be a lot different if Baker had a lesser quality running back, I think. And I'm interested to see where OBJ ends up, because I think he needs a veteran presence. I think if he goes to a team that has a rookie quarterback, it might not jive, because I think Odell has a bit of an ego, and I think he wants the ball, which, I mean, that's understandable. He's a crazy playmaker. He deserves the ball, but I think he needs a scenario where he has somebody that knows what they're doing and knows how to use him and has a level head on their shoulders. Where that is going to be, I don't know. I mean, he's on waivers right now, so somebody's going to have to pick up the $7 million something that's left on his contract, and then basically try to get him to sign with them or do something for them to use him for long term.
You are correct that he is on waivers, and if anybody signs him before, I believe it's 4:00 tomorrow afternoon, they would be on the hook for the $7.5–8 million or whatever he is owed. However, if he is unclaimed by tomorrow at 4:00, then he's officially a free agent, and the Cleveland Browns will be on the hook to pay him half of his salary, and then he'll be able to negotiate a new contract with whomever signs him.
Nice.
So he could end up getting paid $4 million from the Browns, and then say $2 million or $3 million from another team to kind of equal that total balance.
Sure.
And that's how another team is going to be able to sign him and not pay him his entire owed contract.
Nice.
The Browns are going to be on the hook for a little bit, because no one's going to jump at that until he clears that waivers. But the risk that you're running there is, at that point, he's a free agent and he can choose where he goes.
That's true.
So, Jerome's mentioning the Packers as a potential option. That fits what you were talking about with having that veteran quarterback who can kind of nurture the situation and kind of get things going the way that they want it to go. But as we know, the Packers don't always rush out and sign wide receivers whenever they need the help. I don't know where he's going to end up. I do know he will land somewhere. He's not going to be one of these guys that just falls off and never gets a call, because he is too talented. He is one of those guys that is truly a talent. You don't think that a rookie quarterback would be good for him. So that would take the New England Patriots out of the equation, in your opinion, because Mac Jones, rookie quarterback, even though he has the X factor in the head coach, which is Bill Belichick, you don't think that could possibly be a situation that Bill could get him on board for 7 games to finish out the season and make a real strong playoff push?
I don't know if that's the move to make. I think, honestly, Odell would just simply complicate things in New England. I mean, you're not going to scoff at the chance to get that type of talent on your team, but if Odell does want to be part of that system, he's gonna need to check his ego at the door, because that's the Patriot way, as we all know. Is we have a system, you either fit into it or you leave. If he wants to play ball, sure, I think he could do well there, and I think they absolutely need someone with his talent. And can you imagine what Mac Jones would be able to do with a guy who can catch one-handed balls like that in the end zone? But again, you've got to think about the baggage that comes with that. He's kind of like a guy like T.O. He has huge talent. He also has something that he brings along with him. I don't know if that fits there. So it's hard to say. I think he's going to be a bit of a drama queen anywhere he goes. I mean, at least it seems that way. He was sick of dealing with Eli Manning at the end of Eli's career wanted to move on, got sent to the Browns. He didn't necessarily pick to play there, and they just didn't really jive, obviously, for whatever reason. So now it's just kind of a crapshoot as to whether or not he'll end up at a contender or not, which he said he does want to be on a contending team. Who doesn't? So,
well, and that's why him being a free agent is such a big deal, because he can pick and choose.
yeah,
I mean, if the Jets offer him a contract, he can just simply say no.
right.
He's not being traded from the Cleveland Browns. He's going to pick where he's going to go. And if he wants to be on a playoff contending team and be somebody that can put them over the top, I think the Patriots would be a good spot for him. Like you said, if he can check his ego. But to that point, anywhere he goes where a veteran quarterback would be there, he's going to have to check his ego anyway. He's not going to go to Green Bay and tell Aaron Rodgers what to do. He's not going to go to any of these other teams that have an established quarterback and say, hey, I'm the man now. You're backseat to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen. The places where that could happen are the places that have rookie quarterbacks. That's where he can go and kind of assert his will to get what he wants. But he's not going to get that in New England because the coach is going to keep him in check.
Sure. Yeah, he's a complicated figure. And honestly, I hope he finds a home, because like you said, he has talent, and we should be able to see that on the field, because I think it's a waste if he is bouncing around and just never figures it out. But again, it's just one of those guys that has those issues that for whatever reason he can't shake, and he can't just, get over it and play football. And it sucks to see that. And we've seen that a few times in different players, and he's just part of that list. It's so strange to me, those guys that, I guess it's because they're so talented, they develop, this ego that just goes wild, and they never really get it checked, and they think they're untouchable. But if they just only realized, do your job and good things will happen. And I mean, he could be one of those guys that's just, a Hall of Fame bound wide receiver, and he himself is holding him back, and it sucks to see.
Yeah, you might be right about that. While we're speaking about the Patriots, they did roll the Panthers this week, 24-6. This game was kind of ugly offensively for the Patriots. They didn't really have a great performance, but that defense has been winning a lot of games for them lately. They're now on a 3-game winning streak. They've improved to 5-4 on the season, squarely in the hunt for the playoffs in the AFC. That defense picked off the Panthers 3 times in this game, returning one of them for a pick 6. Bill Belichick has got this defense firing on all cylinders. Is there anybody that can really run up the score on them that you can see that's left on their schedule?
It doesn't seem like it, and I think that's the perfect storm for the Patriots, is the ability to lean on that defense, because I think they absolutely need that. They're still figuring out who they are as an offense, and everyone's learning, and we all know that Mac Jones does not have a plethora of weapons to choose from. So if they can keep their offense in games, that's better for them. They like you said, they basically shut down this Carolina offense. It was CMC's first game back, and he did okay. He did fine. Honestly, a little bit better than I thought he would. But that was just that was a perfect defense, almost perfect defense from the Patriots, and that's really what sealed the deal for them.
Yeah, the Patriots defense was able to neutralize CMC. He did what he does. CMC is always going to get a little bit, but they forced Sam Darnold to be the one that had to beat them, and Sam Darnold just couldn't do it.
No way.
Like I said, through 3 interceptions. This is the same defense that he famously said that he was seeing ghosts playing against whenever he was playing with the Jets.
Wonder if he saw some yesterday.
He was seeing ghosts again yesterday. In one of the more boring games of the entire weekend, we saw the Chiefs show Jordan Love absolutely no love, as Coach eloquently put it on there. The Chiefs defeated the Packers by a score of 13-7, and had to be probably the worst football game of the entire weekend.
It was horrible. I mean, it was so boring that the first half was just mismatch after mismatch after just mistake after mistake, and it was ridiculous. That whole game was basically trying not to mess up, and it was crazy. You saw special teams screw ups and all kinds of stuff like that. Mahomes was not on target. Crazy stuff.
Our defensive game's boring now. Come on. Defensive games are not boring if defenses are asserting their will. Whenever you've got a rookie, or not really a rookie, but a second-year quarterback making his first career start, and he cannot hit a wide-open receiver, he's throwing 5 yards over his head. That's not good defense. That's bad offense.
Agreed.
Don't get it twisted.
No, that was not a defensive game. That was just a game full of mistakes, and I think that was on both sides. I think Mahomes had his issues. He did enough to win the game, but that was not the Chiefs that we have seen the past few years. And again, like you said, a guy who's been sitting behind Aaron Rodgers and who should have been learning a lot this whole time really did not show anyone anything. So lots of questions for him, lots of questions for the Packers' future.
I'm glad you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, because I had the thought at some point during this game about Aaron Rodgers and how he was sitting at home on his couch, much like I was, and he was probably cackling watching this performance because he knew that his job was absolutely 152% safe. There was no chance of him losing his job to Jordan Love now or anytime in the future, because he stinks.
Now, if you're the Packers, do you give him a pass because he wasn't necessarily ready for this game? This is a tall order, for him to just kind of come in with guys who he hasn't necessarily been practicing with and replace Aaron Rodgers. Or do you say, we have a problem here, we need to reevaluate our situation?
I absolutely think that they have a problem here. Jordan Love did not look good in the mini camps and training camps. He did not look good in preseason. He did not look good in this performance. Whereas you've got other guys around the league like Simeon, who came in whenever their quarterback got hurt in the middle of a game and beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yep.
So,
and to think the Packers moved up to draft that guy. It's crazy.
Yeah. So coach agrees, stinks. No, Love sucks. The running backs and defense had solid moments. I agree with that. And Love could not make it past. Yeah, that's what I was saying. He was overthrowing or underthrowing. It's somebody as talented as Devontae Adams. He made Devontae just frustrated with some of his passes. There was one, Devontae Adams made a move, and he had inside leverage, no safety protection. All Love had to do was throw the ball in his vicinity, and he had a touchdown, like a good 50, 60-yard touchdown pass. What did he do? He threw the ball out of bounds.
Terrible.
That's just a play that you've got to make if you want to be a quarterback in the NFL.
100%.
Yeah, maybe we're being a little hard on him because it was his first start, but he should have been more prepared than this. Like you said, he's been sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. He should have been learning. He should have been studying and trying to improve. But instead, it seems like he's just been skating by because he didn't think that he was going to have the opportunity to play.
Right. And, honestly, whenever Aaron Rodgers didn't show up to mini camps and OTAs and all that stuff, if I'm Jordan Love, I'm ready to go. If this guy wants to sit out, then this is my team. And even through this whole year, Aaron did come back and he's been playing, obviously, but the writing is on the wall that Aaron Rodgers is basically out of Green Bay. And all signs point to Jordan Love being their next quarterback. If that's me, I'm ready to go whenever. And clearly this guy was not ready on Sunday.
Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, the Packers are still 7-2. They're still, driving the ship in the NFC and all this. But this could be a game that comes back to haunt them, because it could come down in the standings to where, they are tied with another team and they miss out on that coveted bye week going into the playoffs or whatnot. We'll see what happens with that as we get closer to the end of the year. But what this really hurts the Packers in terms of is their trade value. Like you alluded to, Aaron Rodgers seems to be wanting to go somewhere else. All signs point to him playing somewhere else for the rest of his career. Whether that comes to fruition or not will be seen. But performances like this out of Jordan Love, that lowers their ability to trade him. You know, the New England Patriots, when they had Jimmy G as Tom Brady's backup, his trade value was so high because when he did get an opportunity to play, he looked good. And that's why they were able to get so much in return for him. Jordan Love has absolutely zero trade value. I think Blake Bortles would have went in and won that game against the Kansas City Chiefs.
He would have had a better chance. And I remember sending you that screenshot of Shefty saying that they signed Blake Bortles. Imagine if he would have been put in that game and he would have beat the Chiefs. That would have been pretty wild to see.
Yeah, I think he would have been better in that game than Jordan Love. It is what it is, though.
He could at least hit Devontae Adams. That
you would think
that is not a tough thing to do if you're an NFL level quarterback.
Yeah, you would think. Staying there in the NFC, another one of the shock games of the weekend for me was that team, the New Orleans Saints, who coming off of a huge victory of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they went out and lost to the Falcons. Crazy stuff is happening in this world. Matt Ryan goes out and passes for 340 plus yards. He has a couple touchdowns. The Saints end up losing last minute to the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know. No, I don't know what's going on in football, dude.
No, there's no explanation for that. The Falcons, who are notoriously bad, end up doing this, and Matt Ryan has a great game. Unexplainable, honestly. It's just something that I can't even begin to describe how wild that is.
And for the most part, they were able to contain Kamara. I know he ended up putting up like 20 points in fantasy or whatever it was, which was a pretty decent week or whatnot. But that was a late touchdown that he scored. Prior to that, they pretty much held him in check and didn't really let him get going. He wasn't really involved in the passing game, which is where Kamara really shines. And Trevor Siemian, he was held to next to nothing until the second half. So their defense is what really played well the majority of this game. And I can't believe it. Falcons are at 4-4. I know Justin was probably dancing in the streets this weekend because the Falcons won and the Tennessee Vols beat Kentucky.
Yeah, I feel like Atlanta is the happiest they've been in a long time. They've got a World Series champion. The Falcons won a game. It's sunshine and rainbows there.
Georgia's the number one team in college football. Oh, wow. You're right. I think something crazy is happening. Georgia, maybe the devil went back down there or something. Nuts. And then I saw a comment earlier, but I didn't want to get to it just yet. I'll try to scroll up and find it. But this Sunday Night Football, the Titans absolutely stunned the Rams by a final score of 28-16. What did you think about that and that Tennessee Titans defense?
Another one. I mean, another one that I just can't explain. How did this defense of the Rams let the Titans do this? It doesn't make any sense. I literally can't. I don't know. I have no words for that. And furthermore, that Rams offense just wasn't clicking last night either.
No, it wasn't.
I don't understand. I guess, like you said about whichever team it was, you're gonna have weeks like this. You know, you're gonna have weeks where nothing's clicking for you. You can't get anything moving, and I guess that was the case for this Rams team because that was their game to lose, in my opinion, especially with Derrick Henry out, and they couldn't make anything happen.
And Adrian Peterson goes out there and gets a rushing touchdown, and another guy that's like 87 years old going out there and just performing. You gotta love it.
Crazy.
Yeah, we definitely were in a bizarro world where the underdog had their way this week. And, you know, we named our episode The Dog Days this week because the underdogs had their day. And typically whenever we refer to the dog days, we're talking about the long, hot, grueling summer games in baseball. But we're at the NFL point of the season where it's kind of getting grueling. We've got a lot of people that are injured, a lot of teams that have had to overcome adversity. You know, the Browns, the Raiders, a lot of these teams have had a lot of controversy and a lot of adversity they've had to overcome and are still out there winning football games. But let's look back on the first half of this season and talk about who's worthy of being in the conversation of some of the serious hardware that people talk about as it gets closer to the end of the year. So I want to know who our first half award winners are. So Zach, who do you have as your first half comeback player of the half? I guess can't call it the comeback player of the year.
I think I'm going to go with my original pick in just our predictions at the beginning of the season, and Dak Prescott. Aside from Sunday's game, he had a very good comeback off of that serious injury, and he had a questionable start. You know, he was dealing with a shoulder injury. He may still be dealing with something, but he's been killing it. I mean, he has a great offense, obviously, that helps him out. But I think for him to come off of that ankle injury and for him to be as mobile as he is, I mean, he hasn't necessarily missed a step. He's been killing it, at least for this first half, except for that one game, obviously. So he's right back to his old form, and I think he's looked as good, if not better, than he's looked in his entire career.
You know, I agree with you on that one. I think Dak is the comeback player, at least of the first half, and probably will be the comeback player of the year. Coming off of that leg injury, that broken ankle injury, big time injury for a mobile quarterback, and he's already showing that he's worth every penny of the contract because he's thrown for over 2,000 yards in the 7 games that he's played. He has 18 touchdowns to only 5 interceptions. He's out there. He's rushing the football. He's passing with accuracy. I think he's somewhere around 70% completion percentage on the season. Of course, good wide receivers will help out with that, but you need that quarterback to throw the accurate strike. And he's winning games. They're 5-2 with Dak as the quarterback there. He's leading that squad and he's doing the thing. And coming back with that injury, he's got to be the comeback player.
Yep.
Now, we also got to talk about the first half rookie of the year. There are a lot of good rookies out there that are making a name for themselves, and I want to know who you think is the rookie of the first half.
I've got Mac Jones, a guy who we've given a lot of praise to on this show for good reason. You got to think of this guy's situation. You know, he was coming in to be back up to Cam Newton. Newton gets cut. Mac Jones has a very good training camp and gets handed the keys to the dynasty team of the last 20 years. And, you know, obviously the Patriots said goodbye to Tom Brady and it's Mac Jones's turn now. And a lot of people thought that he might do okay. And I think, at least for me, he has exceeded all of my expectations. He seems like he's already a franchise quarterback, and he's played 8 games. If he gets a few weapons, he's going to be very dangerous. He doesn't need much, to be completely honest, because he's already doing better than a lot of guys, especially in his class, and you know, guys that are around his age group. I think he's miles above guys like Tua. It just seems like he has, you know, that professionalism already in him, and he's just ready to go. So he 100% probably for the entire year is going to be the rookie of the year, I think.
You know, that's not a bad choice. He was the 5th quarterback selected in the first round of the 2021 NFL draft, and he has by far been the best quarterback that was selected. You know, you alluded to Cam Newton. In 2020, the Pats, led by Newton for the most part, only had 2,346 yards passing. In 9 games under Mac Jones, they have 2,135 yards. So he's almost already eclipsed the entire 2020 total. He's out there. He's throwing the ball around. The one area where I would give kind of a penalty for him is he only has 10 touchdown passes. Not really a lot of touchdowns, but this is also a team that likes to run the ball when they get closer to the goal line. So maybe we'll see some more touchdown passes throughout the year. And as the offense gets more comfortable and confident in Mac Jones, he'll be developed more. But I've got to say my first half rookie of the year is Jamar Chase. If I'm looking at just the first half stats, I think he's had the best first half of his NFL season and his NFL career. Dude has 835 yards receiving in only 9 games, and he's caught 7 touchdowns. So he's caught almost as many as Mac Jones has thrown. And, a wide receiver is only going to catch what's thrown to him. So, and this is a guy that he's been very consistent. There's only been 2 weeks where he didn't have a touchdown. So that's a guy that's constantly in the end zone, making the big catches and making the big plays. Jamar Chase is my first half rookie of the year.
And that's a very good point. And I think for me, it's a hard toss up between Mac Jones and Jamar Chase. If he were to get the actual award, I think that would be well deserved on his part as well. I do think it's a little bit easier for a wide receiver to be successful versus a quarterback because he has Joe Burrow throwing him the ball, and if he can catch the passes that are thrown his way, he's going to do well. I think for Mac Jones, he has to be the one that steers the ship and makes his own success. No one's necessarily going to feed him that success, but I think Jamar Chase is a great pick as well.
And we'll see what happens in the second half of the season. If Jamar Chase falls off, then Mac Jones can just keep steadily improving. Then that's going to shift the tables for sure. But let's talk about the first half MVP. For me, at age 96, I've got Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This guy, older than Father Time himself, is leading the NFL in passing touchdowns and is among the league leaders in passing yards. He seems to just get better with age, which is unfathomable. Adding another MVP maybe in the future for the 7-time Super Bowl champ. However, I caution Bucs fans about celebrating that too much because I do need to remind them of the MVP curse.
Mm-hmm.
There has not been an MVP to win the most valuable player award and the Super Bowl in the same season since your boy Kurt Warner did it for the Rams back in 1999.
Yep, and that's a very good point. I think Tom is definitely in the conversation. For me, though, I think Kyler Murray is the first half MVP.
Even with the recent injuries and stuff?
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the downfall for the rest of the year is his issues with these injuries, depending on how serious they are. But I think before then, he was lighting it up. And this guy can just run all over the place. I mean, it's crazy to see him move. He's basically the smallest player out on the field, but he evades every tackle pretty much, and he makes stuff happen. Of course, he's got D-Hop down there catching his passes. Nonetheless, I think he's very vital to that team, and he's basically what has transformed that team to average to below average to a contender now. I mean, they're seriously in the talks, and I think it's basically all runs through Kyler Murray, and obviously plus that defense is no slouch either. But I think without Kyler Murray, that team would be a lot harder to find success. Of course, you could say the same about the Bucs. Tom Brady is basically the center point of that team as well. So those two are probably, in my opinion, the front runners there. And I think if Tom can stay on this trajectory, I think he deserves it because, like you said, for a guy to be his age and doing what he's doing is wild to think about in this sport, and here he is doing it. So he, I think, in my opinion, gets a bit of a nod simply because he's not even supposed to be playing at his age, let alone MVP talks.
No, yeah, and that's what's so phenomenal about Tom Brady is I think he's legitimately 44, 45 years of age, and he's out there outperforming guys literally half of his age.
Yep.
It's insane.
People that want to replicate that success, I think, need to really follow or closely follow his routine, because I think there's something to it. There's not many 44-year-olds that can do what he can do.
No, absolutely not. We'll talk about another guy here in a little bit that's in his 40s that suffered a pretty major setback to his career, but that was in a completely different sport. Let's move on to our fantasy booms and busts for the week, Zach. And for my quarterback boom, I've got Justin Herbert. Dude went 31.64 points in fantasy. He had 356 yards passing, 3 total touchdowns. And this is what we saw a lot of last year out of Justin Herbert. This was the rookie phenom that kind of came on and took the world by storm. This is what the Chargers are going to need to see a lot more of if they do hope to be a threat in that AFC West to be the champion or a playoff contender.
Yep, 100%. I've got my quarterback boom as Matt Ryan, which we talked about their game. They shocked the world and beat the Saints. He had him a day. He had 28 points, 343 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Kind of impressive for that Falcons offense. They do have some things that they can do. He can make things happen, but it's a rarity, and I think this was one of those rare weeks where he made it happen. I mean, you are playing your rival, and they do play each other a lot, so that probably kind of fed into that. They know the schemes of that defense, and he was able to capitalize.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Matt Ryan's a good choice for this. This was one of the weeks where he went out there and he performed better than most people expect. And I know he was probably on the bench in a lot of people's leagues and stuff like that, because a lot of people haven't had him as a starter this year. But he's proven for the past few weeks now that he deserves to be a starter in a fantasy lineup, because he is putting up big points now. And without Calvin Ridley, everyone kind of suspected that offense would drop off significantly, but it hasn't. My bust quarterback of the week has to be Josh Allen. 9.56 points. He threw for 246 yards, but he was intercepted twice. He met a brick wall in the name of the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, and he was just not ever able to get on track in this one.
Yeah, that was a rough game for them, and it was just not characteristic of that team and Josh Allen specifically. I'm going to give my bust a bit of a pass because he did get hurt. But this bust is Mike White. And for a guy who, shocked the world and said his name and no one really had heard of him before, he's almost fallen into obscurity just as quickly. He did get a touchdown in his game, but he only posted 7.8 points, a far cry from his 300 whatever yard game against the Bengals. Like I said, he did get an injury. He had some sort of forearm nerve issue, which knocked him out of the game. But you hate to see this from a guy who, had a great game against the Bengals, made some noise in the fantasy world, and people like me picked him up, threw him in there, said, let's give it a shot, and did not pan out.
Yeah. He did look good. He came out hot throwing that touchdown on the first drive, but that early exit, that first round injury definitely hurt you in fantasy football. So,
yep.
What about your running back? Who was your booming running back for the week?
My booming running back has got to be James Conner, a guy who has fallen off of the radar a little bit ever since leaving the Steelers. He finds himself along with Kyler Murray in the Cardinals team. And man, he had himself a day of I'm trying to find who's got him. I know he got 40 points.
He was on the bench in our league.
Was he on the bench? Okay. Yeah. Well, sucks for that person. But yeah, I mean, 40 points for this guy who has not made much noise in quite a while is pretty impressive. I should be more prepared.
It is Adam that has him, and he had 96 yards rushing. He had 3 total touchdowns. He had himself a game.
Yeah. Obviously, the touchdowns are the big move there, but I think that's a guy like that. He like Matt Ryan. He's not necessarily considered an option to start, even like in like a flex position. He just is not consistent, but he was able to explode this week, and I think a lot of people probably missed out on those 40 points. But if you were one of the lucky few that put him up, I'm sure you're ecstatic.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's a guy that we've told people, stay away from James Conner. He's not going to be the stud. This was the perfect storm for him. Chase Edmonds got injured early in that game, so he was utilized as the primary running back. Of course, they didn't have D-Hop. They didn't have Kyler Murray. So they were like, you're the only one that knows the offense. Go out there and run it.
Right.
And he did. Perfect storm for James Conner owners. But like you said, I bet a lot of people had him on the bench.
Yep.
My boom, Jonathan Taylor, 34 points, 172 yards rushing. He broke off a 78-yard rush, and he had 2 total touchdowns. This dude, I actually had to play against him this week, so it kind of killed me whenever I saw that he scored 34 on Thursday night, because I knew I was playing from behind all weekend, and I just never was able to catch up. Jonathan Taylor, he had himself a ball game, and the Colts are lucky to have him.
Yep, 100%.
My bust running back is Austin Eckler. 11.2 points, not a terrible outing, 59 yards rushing, but it was against one of the worst defenses against the rush. The Philadelphia Eagles have been known to give up big yards to running backs, and they held him to 59 yards rushing. The Chargers nearly lost this game in part because Eckler couldn't get going from the line of scrimmage. Even with the fantastic game that Justin Herbert had, Austin Eckler was not really involved.
Yeah, and that's one of those guys that you think going up against the Eagles would have a field day and just didn't make it happen for whatever reason. I've got my bust as Aaron Jones. If you're going to put out your rookie, he's really in his second year or whatever it is. If you're going to put your new guy out in quarterback, why not hand the ball off a ton, especially against a lackluster Chiefs defense? For whatever reason, that wasn't the case. That wasn't in the game plan. Aaron Jones only put up 5.3 points for 53 yards. I expected so much more out of this guy. He really should have been out there tearing it up against the defense. I guess he just wasn't in the game plan. I can't really think of anything else, because all I really saw in that game was, like we alluded to earlier, Jordan Love just overthrowing everybody. I don't understand why he wasn't given the rock more, but it is what it is. This is a guy who a lot of people have as their RB1, RB2. He really let a lot of people down this week, I think, and myself included.
Yeah, I don't want to be too critical of their game plan, because they did have 20-plus rushing attempts between Jones and Dillon combined. So they did hand the rock off a lot, but the problem was they kept finding themselves in short and long or third and long situations that forced Love to have to try to make a pass.
Sure.
The defense they stayed crept up. I think at some point in the game, the Chiefs had blitzed like 17 or 18 times.
Oh, wow.
So pretty much any time that Love dropped back, there was a blitz in his face.
Yeah.
And it was just not an ideal situation. The running game got snuffed because there were so many people swarming the box. They played a good defensive game, the Chiefs did, for a team that hasn't been that good at defense.
Right. And maybe that was just, part of the plan. Like, okay, we know Aaron Rodgers is out, so this offense is not ready to just kind of change gears. So let's just throw the kitchen sink at them, and clearly it worked.
Yeah. As far as wide receivers are concerned, I didn't think anybody was really a boom or a bust. Everybody was just kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
There wasn't anybody that outperformed anybody else, in my opinion. But do you have any wide receivers that boomed or busted for you?
I'd say a boom for me is Christian Kirk from the Cardinals. He's a guy who just kind of rarely is in games, and he's rarely a part of it, but he did score 16 points this week. He got 6 receptions and 91 yards. Yeah, a guy who typically fits into it like a flex spot if you need to, but he's hardly ever, like I said, he's hardly ever in the mix. But this week they were able to utilize him, and he put up some good points.
Well, they had to. They had nobody else on the field.
Right.
So, makes sense. One other boom that I do want to talk about is the New England Patriots defense.
Yeah, huge.
Not 19 points from the defense. They only allowed 6 points. They had 3 interceptions, one of which was a pick 6. This is a very under the radar defense too, as far as fantasy is concerned. Going into week 9, they were only rostered in 61% of ESPN leagues. And by the way, that same ESPN has them ranked as the third best defense.
Crazy. Yeah, that was a monster game for them. I envy whoever has them in our league.
It's your boy. Yeah, they definitely went out there and balled. Zach, this weekend we also got to watch UFC 268, and it was a packed card from top to bottom. I don't know about you, but I didn't really catch any of the prelims or the undercard. But apparently, we missed a heck of a show because at one point there were 6 straight knockout or TKO finishes that had the crowd absolutely buzzing by the time the main card started. And then that first fight on the main card between Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler, it was an absolute banger. The crowd was electric. They were on their feet for the entire fight. Man, what did you think about that fight between Gaethje and Chandler? And do you think that Gaethje should be the next up for any title shot that's available?
That was just a brawl. I mean, through and through. I got to give hats off to Michael Chandler for surviving the wrath of Justin Gaethje, because that was impressive. And I do think Gaethje's stock moved up. I mean, that guy can take some punches and deliver some punches, and it's just a huge, wild mix of stuff that he can do. Like you and I were texting about that uppercut. I don't know if I've ever really seen him utilize that, but man, that was on the money that night, and he used it. It was great.
Yeah, I felt so smart because I was calling that uppercut early on, and then they had like the expert come on there and do their analysis, and they were like, "Oh, and his uppercut that he keeps hitting, and it's available for him anytime he wants it." I was like, "That's exactly what I said. I saw the same thing."
Yeah.
Man, I'm an expert at this.
There you go.
But do you think that he's next in line for a title shot?
I hope so. I don't see really anyone that has the level of talent that Gaethje has, and 2, just the level of opponents that he's come toe to toe with. I mean, basically the only guy he hasn't been able to beat, along with everyone else in the UFC, is Khabib. So I think he's right up there in contention. I think he deserves a title shot, and hopefully they give one to him.
I agree. I 100% agree, and I think the Gaethje, and if it's Oliveira, I think that would be a very interesting fight.
Love it.
The Shane Burgos and Billy Quarantillo fight was one that a lot of people probably didn't pay a lot of attention to.
Yeah.
Not because the fight was lackluster or that it was a boring fight. In fact, it was a great fight. But coming off of 6 finishes in a row, and then the Gaethje Chandler decision where they fought for 15 minutes just basically in a phone booth. This fight, the audience kind of took their breath. They kind of sat back in their seats and relaxed for a few minutes. Probably more beer was sold during this fight than at any other point in this entire card.
Yep.
But it was a great fight. Burgos got the decision victory, but Billy Q showed that he belonged in the UFC and that he belonged fighting top tier talent.
Yep, I completely agree. He held in there too, and he held his own, and I think that's respectable. And I do think we'll see him again. It's going to be tough, a tough climb for him, obviously. But like you said, I think he does belong here, at least for a few more fights. See what he can do.
Yep.
That was a tough fight for both of them, and he ate a lot of damage. So I think they'll give him another shot for sure, and hopefully he can make something happen. But yeah, ultimately Burgos got the decision there. But he seems like a guy that's kind of on the come up, and they're kind of building him up and running him through the ranks.
Yeah, I agree. He looks like he's a very talented young fighter, and he got through this test, and that's what I'll call Billy Q in this one, is he was a test.
Yeah,
and he passed it. So Marlon Vera had the answer for Frankie Edgar. See what I did there? And I told you before the fight that I've always liked Frankie Edgar, but every time I cheer for him, he ends up losing. Well, here we go again. Same is true, because he got his face absolutely rearranged by a highlight reel front kick by Vera. This is the old man, the 40-year-old fighter that I was talking about earlier, that he didn't quite have the performance that he wanted to. And do you think we've about seen the end of Frankie Edgar?
I hope so. I hope he's not one of those guys that just tries to make all these terrible fights just to make money. I wish a lot more fighters would find a different avenue to make income, whether that be a coach or a commentator or just have a podcast or something, because I hate seeing these old legends of the sport keep continuing to fight. And I mean, I'm not saying he didn't belong in there, but I think that should have been his last one, because Cheeto Vera is one of the up and comers and one of the new faces of the UFC, and I just don't think a guy like Frankie Edgar can compete with that. The UFC and MMA in general is one of those sports where father time catches up to you pretty quick, and that you can't keep up. It's nothing against Frankie. I think he's a good fighter. A lot of stuff never really went his way, but it's time for him to hang it up. I hope he does. I don't know if he will or not, but yeah, I think the UFC has passed him by at this point.
Yeah, they were talking during the fight that he made his pro debut back in 2005. He made his UFC debut in 2007. He won the championship at a completely different weight class from BJ Penn several years ago. He has been around. He's seen a lot of wars, and I never want to be the guy that says that guy needs to retire, because who am I to say that a fighter doesn't have it in him anymore? But I do think that there are other avenues in the fight game that Frankie Edgar could join in or take advantage of. He's a good talker. Put him on a mic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he did an episode on Rogan's podcast, and yeah, he was a great guest. I think that's something that he could definitely get into.
Yeah, I agree. But best of luck to him and Marlon Vera with that highlight reel knockout that you'll see for years to come.
Yep.
Thug Rose Namajunas, in case you haven't heard, is the best. She says it every time she walks to the ring. She says it as they're announcing her. She just keeps repeating her mantra, "I'm the best, I'm the best." And she proved it by outlasting Weili Zhang via a split decision. What did you think of this fight? Do you think that we are ultimately going to see a trilogy?
100%. That was a extremely close fight. I think you and I both had it 2-2 going into the 5th round.
Yep, we did.
That's that's a very clashing bout there, and I think we might see at least 3 more, or not 3 more, but at least a third fight, because these two are very evenly matched. Clearly, I think Rose has a bit of an advantage there, but I think if Weili can get some groundwork going, that's probably the key to beat Rose, because it seems like Rose cannot be beaten on the ground on standing. I mean, she's
so precise with her strikes.
It's wild. As small as those girls are, they pack a punch, and it's crazy to say. And she's no stranger to that. Wild fight to watch. She's the champ, and I think that's definitive, but I do think that this is going to be ran back relatively soon. I mean, I also don't think that they have very many other options to put in there for her.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point. That division is a little bit lacking as far as the overall talent is concerned. The main event saw bad blood between the champ Kamaru Usman and challenger Colby Covington boil over into an epic 5-round war. In the end, Usman earned a unanimous decision and proved that he is pound for pound the best fighter in the UFC today. What did you think of this fight? Do you think Colby had a better showing than this performance? The last time they fought, Colby said that it was his worst night and that it was Usman's best night. This time around, I think they both put on a great showing, and Usman was still better.
I completely agree with that. I don't think Colby has any excuses this time.
No.
I just think he was simply outmatched. I think Usman is just a better fighter. And that's not necessarily a knock on Colby. I think Colby he went 5 rounds with the guy. He did not get knocked out or submitted or anything like that.
And that's saying something.
Absolutely. Usman is dangerous. Absolutely. And like you just said, he's currently, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, the pound for pound best.
Yep.
And that's a pretty tall feat for that guy. And I think this Colby and Usman thing is done. I really don't think there's going to be a third one. It was more tightly matched this time than last time. But again, there was no way that Colby was going to win that. Going into the 5th round, he was surviving. He was, doing okay. He had a couple rounds and a couple moments where he hurt Usman, but it wasn't anything egregious or anything, anything to change the tide of the fight. So this one was basically locked up for Kamaru Usman, and I think maybe they'll fight again down the road, but I'm not really wanting a trilogy anytime soon. I think we need to find a new opponent for Kamaru Usman, but I think he's got that division locked up for sure. I think Colby was his biggest threat at the moment, and he put him away again for the second time definitively. So for the UFC and for fans, I think it's time to move on from that little feud there. And I don't know if you saw, but at the end of the fight, they kind of seemed to put things to bed, and Colby kind of came up to him and they had words, and I think they both understood that it was kind of for show. I mean, Colby has this personality that he puts on, and I think it's to sell tickets. And it seems like they kind of know the business, and they don't have any actual bad blood, which is good. So I think this is probably over, at least for a while.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was kind of nice to see. It was also funny whenever the ref was like, "Okay, you guys can kiss later. Let's get this over with."
Yeah.
But it is interesting to try to look ahead and play matchmaker, because Kamaru Usman obviously is the champ. He beat Gilbert Burns back in February, who is the number 2 ranked welterweight. He just beat Colby Covington again, who is the number 3 ranked welterweight. And then next up would be Leon Edwards, a guy that I don't think even deserves to have that shot yet. His last fight was a unanimous decision against Nate Diaz back in June, but it maybe if he gets through Jorge Masvidal in December in a convincing manner, then maybe Leon Edwards is next.
Yeah, I think if I were matchmaker, I would give Kamaru a year off or so, let him go do his thing, and I would just try to build up those contenders and see who's really about to face off against Kamaru Usman, because, like I said, he's got the division locked up. So if you just throw him his next victim in 6 months, it's not going to be that much of a showing. I think if you can get somebody in there who's legitimate and who's a threat to him, it'll be a much better showing. And I think that'll make that division a lot more entertaining, because I think if one guy is so dominant like he is, kind of gets stale.
Yeah.
So I would try to find an actual contender out of that division. It might be Gilbert Burns, it might be whoever, but I don't think we should just keep feeding Kamaru Usman, his next victim, and just throw him to the wolves, because that gets really stale after a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. We'll see what happens, what they ultimately decide to do. I know Usman has been a fighting champ. He has wanted to keep going out there and defending that belt. So we'll see. But Leon Edwards just doesn't seem to be the fight that sell a lot of tickets. In my opinion.
I wouldn't think so at all.
Much like tonight's Monday Night Football game between the Bears and the Steelers, it's not one that I'm really clamoring to watch. Are you even going to tune into that one?
Yeah, if I have nothing to do, I'll probably flip it on for a little bit before we go to bed. But I'm not really excited for this one. I'm not going to stay up for it or anything at all. I think it's going to be just a pretty lackluster game. I do think that the Steelers are probably ultimately going to win. I expect Najee Harris to have a pretty good game. He's been kind of picking up his level of workload, and I think they're going to start to utilize him a little bit more. The Bears, on the other hand, basically a dumpster fire. Justin Fields is running for his life constantly. I expect him to run for his life in this game as well, and it's just not going to be a good game for him. And I think this whole season is not going to be great for the Bears.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's one of those games that I'm not really that excited about. Like you, I'll probably have it on for a few minutes just before I go to bed, but not anything that's going to keep me up all night. We kicked off our night talking about awards in Major League Baseball, and we talked about the Cy Young Awards. Well, while we've been on here live, they've announced the finalist for the AL and NL MVP.
All right.
In the NL, we've got Bryce Harper of the Phillies, Juan Soto of the Nationals, and Fernando Tatis Jr. From the Padres. I believe I called. Did I say Fernando Tatis Jr.? Or
I think you did. I think we both did. Maybe
both of us maybe did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the American League, the Blue Jays, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. No shock to anybody. Also from the Blue Jays, Marcus Semien is a finalist for MVP. That's kind of a shock.
Yeah.
And my pick for AL MVP, Shohei Ohtani.
I think he's a show-in for that award.
I see what you did there. So let us know what you guys think. Who's your AL and NL MVPs, and let us know in the comments, and we'll read that and get back to you on that one. Zach, you have anything else you want to add tonight?
Nope, we're all good.
We are all good. We went a little bit over time tonight, but we had a lot to cover in this 170th episode of the Nest Podcast. Still can't believe we're at that many episodes in a row. Consecutive every week. We are here Monday night at 7:00 p.m. And we appreciate all of you that have been watching and commenting along, and everyone that downloaded it on the podcast app, whichever one you chose to listen to us on. We appreciate all of you, and we hope to see you back this time next week. And if you're a fantasy football player, check us out on Saturday nights whenever we talk about who you should have in your lineup to win your league on Champ to Champ. We'll see you guys then. We out.